Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology Podcast, featuring tech legend Jake Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Hey, Pete. You can ignore my email. I found the right link. I jumped to where I store them, and the one I saw was not the current one. So.
Oh, we got so many.
Yeah, I jumped in. It said December 14th. I thought, I will wait. I will wait at this meeting until doomsday. But it won't open.
I don't think even neurofeedback can make us go back 7 days.
We can speed up and slow down the EEG somehow, but not by days.
We have to work on our capes.
But time itself is actually kind of a bit of an illusion. Are you aware of the presentiment experiments?
No, I'm not. Tell me, Jay.
Okay, a presentiment is a feeling you have ahead of an event. And the experiment goes like this. There's a 5-second period during which they measure a physiological measurement. Could be pupil diameter, could be electrodermal activity, could be heart rate, all sorts of different kinds of measurements have been used for this. And at the end of the 5 seconds, a random number generator picks a picture from a selection of pictures. And so the picture isn't selected during your 5 seconds that they're measuring, but they measure your emotional response to a picture that hasn't been selected. And the emotional response is appropriate because the pictures are either extremely emotionally evocative or just neutral. Picture of a chair, picture of a tree, that's routine stuff, or
Trump,
bloody, gory stuff. I mean, but it's a standard picture set that's either extreme or bland. And people have emotional responses to the pictures that haven't even been selected by a random number generator yet. And this has been replicated hundreds and hundreds of times. The Noetic Science Institute, Dean Radin, does these kinds of things. As he says, real magic. I think he has a book by that title, but he's quite a character. But those experiments basically show that you think, oh God, how can this happen? But the illusion that is time is linear, and it's not. The immediate future is affecting us, and our past influences us. I talk to people in Australia. It's tomorrow in Australia, right. So what do I have? Time traveling, well, it's very, very strange in that way. And then when you start to talk to physicists about somebody in a spaceship being launched and traveling around, and years later coming back, and they're identical twin, and they're different physiologic ages because you don't age the same way. Anyway, time is a bizarre, nonlinear phenomenon.
Just ask Einstein.
Well, we'll have him on,
Well, I mean, everything.
We already did a show talking about his brain. The least he could do is have him here to refute the discussion,
Well, if it's all about frequencies, if a train's going by at 50 miles an hour and another one's going at 50, and you're
those were great math
relative.
Questions, weren't they? So,
Dr. Marie, you just walked in on some Einstein conversations.
It
Oh,
wasn't an Einstein conversation really.
knowing
Ahead of
you
the
two, this
show,
is
I,
irony.
I commented that time, the illusion was time, and time wasn't really linear, and pointed to the presentiment experiments as an example of time not being linear, and that the immediate future is affecting the current state of now. Those experiments are physiological experiments, but they're really quite striking. And people that have the hard, reality is a hard, well-known reality, really put us off by the experiment. Uh, because people have a physiological response that's appropriate to a picture that's not been selected yet. And they measure your pupil diameter or your blood pressure or your heart rate or your electrodermal. Lots of different kinds of things have been measured, and then during that 5 seconds, they look at your emotional response basically. Then a random number generator picks the picture, and it's either extremely emotionally evocative or it's a neutral picture. And it's extremely well replicated. Dean Radin at the Noetic Science Institute here in California is well known for these experiments. And
I just expressed that there's a lot in this world that I don't understand. It doesn't mean it's not real, and sometimes it doesn't mean it's real either. So just fascinating work, though. Fascinating work.
But if you're a narcissist, does time stand still? Is it?
What a topic you picked today, Pete. This is a good one.
Well, I said we would talk about it last week, and here we are, and then sure enough, I go look, and there's in the news, holidays and narcissists, and
Well, I mean, I think no, there's a positive and a negative to all of this. The term gaslighting and narcissistic, it's kind of like ADHD was a few years back. Everybody, all of a sudden, their partner or their parent or whatever is gaslighting them or is a narcissist. But I think it's really positive that we're bringing attention to this really not just heartwhelming, but potentially dangerous personalities when they're in, shall we say, public office or any position of power. And how you define power. Is power your spouse? Is power your parent? Is power your boss? So to work with these individuals. Whoops, where did I go?
What is gaslighting? Everybody uses the term, but I'm not sure everybody understands what it means. One thing to one person and another thing to another one. It's not good, is it?
Definitely not good. It's essentially when you manipulate your actions or your words to have somebody believe something that isn't happening or isn't true. And in its extreme form, you can make somebody feel that they're crazy, whether it's moving a glass of water around or keys around or manipulating experiences. But in its true form, it is, psychological destructive manipulation at its core.
Like Pete,
and the term gaslight is, if you've ever seen the flickery old-fashioned gas lights, it gives you kind of a surreal look to your environment, and that thus the term gaslight for the experience. It's it's not real, it's surreal.
I still don't get it. Does that mean like, hey Pete, you're a great podcast host? If only you talked better.
Okay, well, I'll go.
Is that gaslighting? Like, give me an example.
Let's just say in a spousal relationship, somebody starts to question they're having trouble finding their glasses all the time, and they think that they're starting to be forgetful, but the spouse is moving the glasses. Same type of thing, that somebody goes out and buys oranges and pears and apples, and then all of a sudden there are no apples in the house, and the spouse says, oh, I swore I bought apples, and the partner actually took the apples and said, no, you didn't. Okay. So essentially playing with somebody as if they have dementia. But it can also be in terms of things that were said or done, characteristics of personality. But yeah, essentially altering somebody's reality or truth with intent to destabilize them. Yeah, Jay, do you have more to add?
Or you can describe to somebody events that in a way that they didn't happen, basically,
Yeah.
and try to suggest that, oh well, you can't believe your damn eyes.
Yeah.
This is how it happened,
Mm-hmm.
and try to convince you that what you actually saw happen, the reality of it, wasn't real, and thus the gaslighting gives you a false reality.
Yeah.
And some people would refer to that as spin.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a spin doctor can look at a terrible loss and create it as a win of some sort, and
Politician.
yeah, well, politicians and spin doctors seem to travel in the same circle somehow. So
Yeah, to a certain extent, certain news programs, but even, two teenagers gossiping and just altering little details so that the event doesn't resemble anything that actually occurred. Yeah, but what's the fine line between, just human behavior where we embellish or underbellish, new word there, versus, but for me, it's when there's intent. There's intent to have somebody perceive reality in a different way, not necessarily only for your benefit, but against them. And I think
yeah.
that's a key component there.
And it ties into narcissism, because the narcissist who wants to be the center of everything is going to twist reality to make themselves the center of everything. And they'll create whatever chaos is needed in order to create that.
Yeah. Yeah. But one of the things, as we go deeper and deeper, I think it's really important to recognize that all of us have a few of these characteristics. And just what I was talking about, gaslighting, like putting a different spin on a story, that doesn't mean you're an evil person. That means you're human and you want to tell an interesting story. The same type of thing, where are the fine lines between a true narcissist and somebody who's just interested in self? Well, to me, there are no fine lines. There are huge differences. And I think in the public eye, we have to be a bit careful that this term is getting a little too popular. So I'd love to talk today about like what a true blue evil, malevolent, Machiavellian narcissist is and is not.
What is going on in their heads that somebody would want to gaslight somebody? Because from where I sit and what I've heard, on social media, is it's like parents or kids accuse their parents of doing that. Why would a parent or anybody want to do that to somebody else? Like, what's going on upstairs? Is it a control thing? What's wrong up there, or what's dysregulated?
If you're somebody who has a company and you make statements about your company in order to influence people's opinion of the company, maybe influencing the stock price, for instance, the SEC doesn't look kindly on that sort of thing. And you can get in trouble for falsely making false statements, basically, to influence the price of your stock, or the company that's considering merging or purchasing or something like that. So there are people that use gaslighting to influence people's opinion all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how you frame something ends up being crucial. One of the links you sent was referring to Elon Musk's stuff, and he says it's full self-driving autopilot. And, then there's all the subtext of, well, you have to keep your hands on the wheel, you better be ready to take over at any time and everything. But, they were just, what was it, a few million cars recalled, where they basically have to get rid of that technology unless you're actually on a freeway, because it just doesn't work. There are people getting killed, people running into vehicles, blowing through stoplights, and it was well documented. So, they couldn't gaslight their way out by saying it was the driver's fault or something. They've got solid evidence. The car driving 80 miles an hour through a T intersection, zoop to the, there's no road there at all. It didn't slow down. Those kinds of fatal accidents end up happening with that kind of technology because it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And it was a beta test, and the driver had to sign, yeah, it's a beta test. I agree. I'm testing this stuff. But what about the driver next to him or the pedestrian in front of him? They didn't sign up for any freaking beta test. This is. And that there was a reason for that recall. It just doesn't work. If you're in a street with pedestrians, it doesn't necessarily spot them the way you really should, and it doesn't see emergency vehicles in the way it really should. And on a road, it seems to work reasonably well, and but there's lots of vehicles that can do that. But it was promoted in an excessive kind of a gaslighting of the reality of it being a beta test, and it was shinier and brighter than it really was. It was kind of a something that still had to be developed further, and it was released as though it was the final product, much to the dismay of a lot of people that have had very bad accidents.
Yeah. Full disclosure here, that I was not able to read the article up in Canada, but I'm familiar enough with it. A few months back, certain vehicles were banned on the roads. You just couldn't use them in the cities, certain features in the city. So this has kind of been going on internationally. It's really, really easy to point the finger at Elon Musk, but this is a characteristic of business, and I think it's exaggerated now. I would say in AI, if we want to loop back to what we were talking about, a lot of the one of these days,
it's all part of the show. It's like Jay's dog.
Yeah. No, not just dog, me going in and out. No, but it's just a feature of the corruption in business. And what I was saying in terms of a lot of the things in terms of artificial intelligence and chatbots, it's just not ready. And we can loop this into everything, nefarious business principles, putting things out when they haven't been properly tested, whether they're chemical compounds in makeup or in milk. But they're just, higher principles, a quick death of a pedestrian versus a slow death of a baby, when a milk product is slowly poisoned. Yep. But it's the intent. I would say again, where's the fine line between trying to protect a product and this being a baseline personality characteristic?
How did teenagers get into this narcissism to brand somebody with it, or putting a label on somebody? Is it just another way of a type of
I'd say every teenager is a narcissist. I think this is a developmental phase, right? The world revolves around me for around 3.5 years. No, jokes aside, you also mentioned parents, right? With this whole big trend of child-centered parenting, if you have any authority or try and actually parent a child these days, We'll give space for the puppy.
My co-host here
Yeah.
popped in
Chiming
for
in.
a visit.
It's a narcissist.
Yeah, no, but there's quite a when I was talking about before, there are no fine lines here. You either are or you are not. A parent parenting, having boundaries for their children, not giving everything to their children, taking care of self. That has nothing to do with narcissism. We can talk about strict parents, less strict parents, authoritarian parents, things like that, but that has nothing to do with narcissism. A true narcissistic parent is destructive on the child. The child grows up feeling very, very destabilized, that they don't have a place in the world, and can also develop traits themselves. Yeah. So.
But what does it mean? Like when a teenager says, well, he's I know all teenagers are narcissists, but in their little groups they're pointing the finger at somebody. That's the brand that you don't want to be. Do they even know what they're calling somebody? If they do, what is it?
I don't think they are. I think this is a term being thrown around, right? A narcissist, not only, a narcissist takes something away when they ask something of you, right? Maybe that's something we can throw in the definition. It's not taking the biggest portion of food, it's ensuring that they eat your food and you're starving a little bit, right? It's truly about not just the world revolving around them, but that you don't matter in that world, and manipulating you in such a way that your self-worth and your self-value goes down to elevate them.
Can you fix that? How many sessions will it take?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, this is
like,
what's
going on up there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Jay, but I tend to see the X's of narcissists more than the narcissists themselves. No pun intended. The narcissist doesn't think they need therapy. So in the world is going beautifully for the narcissist. For a narcissist, to give up that control, that power, there's no self-interest whatsoever in the narcissist themselves seeking help, unless they want something. So, for example, if there's a divorce situation and privileges of seeing children, or privileges of manipulating children are being lost under those circumstances. But I think a lot of this goes back to early childhood. The articles, I think Ashley did a really, really good job of parsing. It's the perfect elevation of the individuals on, I'm not going to say on straw, but giving great value to the superficial, and taking away value of the individual. So praising the way somebody presents themselves to the outside world. So how they dress, for example, or how much money they allude to have, but then devaluating how they speak, or not giving all this external praise, but no praise for their personality or how they care for how they feel. Those type of things. Mm-hmm.
And you're right about it being early life onset. Alan Schore's work is quite dated, but it goes back to the development face-to-face of the infant with the parent, and the feedback that they get face-to-face, developing the neurochemistry of the brain and the networks in the brain. And without proper parenting, you can end up having a personality disorder. And that's so deep and so buried underneath all sorts of layers of cortical overlay that it's foundational, and it's very difficult to get that deep. Dirk de Ritter basically suggested that personality disorders are virtually impossible to touch. And he's a neurosurgeon. He could go in after it, but it's not it's not an easy thing to deal with. Very much like early childhood trauma is very, very difficult to get down deep to actually fix it. It's as difficult as that, and that's almost impossible. If you look at the people that are working out developmental trauma, it's extraordinarily difficult to end up therapeutically with that.
Is it a DSM-5? Is it? I mean, is it in there? I mean, can you get
narcissistic personality disorder? I mean, it's all in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
it's all in there.
But it's all behavioral definitions, and the DSM-5 needs to be burned at the stake. I would light the match. I would pour the gas.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, insurance will pay for it, but what are they paying for? Is it talk therapy? Is there anything else you can do for it? Like, how do you train it, treat it, whatever the word is?
I mean, we don't want to be defeatist here, but I'm very much with Jay. I'll go back, when you were talking about Alan Schore, I wanted to break into song. Yes, but that old song, nobody does it better. Please go back. I say, Schore, Ainsworth, there are a couple of early developmental psychologists. I mean, people have rewritten what they've done, but their fundamental work is still the go-tos. But what are the difference between states and traits? The attachment wiring. We're going back to what we were talking about last week in terms of how important it is to instill in a newborn to toddler the notion of belonging and safety. And if you do not install the notion of safety, that is the beginning of the narcissist, in terms of external performance value, and nothing nurtured on the inside in terms of the development of the person. What can you do about it?
Well, develop a manipulative style, basically, from the beginning.
But some of the things, we all talk about liabilities. We're all walking around with inherent genetic liabilities in terms of our EEG. And what does it take to express that? Some of the things, for our newbies in neurotherapy, you want to be really, really careful. So I'm going to do one of those, do not do this at home. Or if you do, make sure you're supervised by somebody who knows what they're doing. But sometimes, even though you don't have a deregulation marker in the frontal lobes, you can do a little work in there. Okay. Jay was talking about the anterior cingulate, as well. Some of the real rigidity markers, you can soften that up a little. Some of the things that are associated with agitation. So theta SMR, too much beta in the back of the brain. So all of these are things that can, excuse me, potentially quiet a person. And I think those things can be helpful in terms of taking the edge off of some of the characteristics. But when you're dealing with like a true blue, full-blown narcissist, they're in a universe of their own, and unless there's some extreme consequence,
I think Pete's point earlier is something that will influence how many of them you see clinically. They don't tend to think there's anything really wrong with them. Why would I go for therapy if I am not only okay, but I am the way everyone should be? This is the end all and be all, the narcissist. So they're not going to walk in for therapy. Now,
they'll bring their family in, though.
They may come in for peak performance work, and that's the one area where you may end up seeing them come in. But don't expect them to come into a clinical practice as much as a performance practice. Anyway,
isn't it the same thing when let's say somebody's got a drinking problem, they don't think they have a drinking problem, then they bring all the family and friends together in an intervention and say, yeah, you do. That wouldn't work with a narcissist?
Well, the narcissist has an element of control. right? Now, narcissism and alcoholism, there's a nice pairing, and it does exist. But yeah, what the narcissist only has something to lose by going into therapy. When individuals do an intervention on an alcoholic, if the alcoholic does not perceive that they have anything to lose, indeed, then the intervention won't work. But narcissists don't feel they have anything to lose, and if they're aware of it, they're going to do everything to position themselves so that it will not be lost. So they'll flip it as the cause being the other individual.
So if
Now,
you're a narcissistic addict, you're screwed.
no, that you're fine. It's everybody around you.
Yeah. The therapist needs to be somewhat protected if they're not experienced. The relationship with a narcissist can be such that the therapist is the one who's going to be gaslighted, and you've got to recognize that relationship as a problematic one, and if you're not grounded yourself and backed up with your own people working with you, and as a therapist, you usually have a therapist, so it's a dangerous person walking in the door. Now, they're not necessarily the same kind of danger as the school shooters and things such as that, but we've got psychiatric danger in some individuals.
They can also weaponize your knowledge. Okay, I'm going to loop in a sociopath. Okay, because they're sociopaths and narcissists cross over. But if you get a really good sociopath who's coming in for your assistance, so for example, in an individual in couples therapy, or an individual who wants to help improve relationships in their life, your knowledge can be weaponized against other people, because you will not see that the sociopathic characteristics. One of the things we haven't talked about is most narcissists and sociopaths, when you first meet them, they're magnets. They're charming, delightful, very, very poised people. And most individuals are very, very attracted to them. Okay, I'm not just talking in a romantic way. They draw people to them, and by the time an individual usually realizes something else is wrong, there's no real route to solve it, because of that personality, that there are 10 other people who thinks that person's light is still so beautiful and bright. So, once you're in the orbit, a close orbit of an individual like this, you really have to take care of yourself.
the ability to actually identify this and the narcissist or the sociopath or the psychopath end up reading people well.
Yeah.
And if in your late first year or second year of development, you end up having some attachment issues where you have shame or guilt developed, which are left hemispheric emotion, not right frontotemporal emotion. You read that up in Schore's work very nicely. They'll spot that, and they'll manipulate you with your weaknesses. And some people are easily led around by their psychiatric difficulties. So that they have an entire entourage of folks that they've got kind of under their psychological spell.
But another very interesting point, and again, I really, the articles you sent out, Pete, got it on the head. I'm usually not a big fan of newspaper articles. People don't do their research, but these guys did. Most narcissists and sociopaths are not interested in simple, meager people. Okay, it's like a hunter, that they want the biggest, best, shiniest prey, okay, because that's their accomplishment. Okay. So they want somebody who's intelligent. They want somebody who's achieved. They want somebody who's physically attractive. Okay. Because if you can manipulate and control and dominate that, that is your gold star. So these are the type of people that they collect and target. Not to be insulting, but somebody who is not very intelligent, has not accomplished themselves in school, does not present well, has a very, very weak personality, you're very, very safe from a narcissist or sociopath. You're not big enough prey. Now, I'm not saying you won't meet a can we swear on the show, Pete?
Go ahead. Google loves
Okay,
it.
I'm saying, okay, I'm not saying you won't, get into a horrible relationship, or an asshole won't find you attractive, but there's a big difference between an asshole and a narcissist and a sociopath. Again, they do cross over, but we're talking about a psychiatric condition, not just a mean person now.
Jay and I know that. So when you say prey, if you're going to prey on someone, there's you want to put something on the wall, you want to mount something on the wall. What's the trophy?
The trophy tends to be, a spouse, other people in your entourage, whether it's at work. Also, I mean, most narcissists and sociopaths are pretty high achievers themselves, right? So they tend to be employers, not employees. They tend to be in higher management rather than on the floor. It's about dominating a work environment, whether it's a university or a large company, definitely within the family. Sure, you conquer the spouse, but you conquer the children, you conquer the in-laws. Right. It's about really making yourself king or queen. And most of us assume we tend to talk a lot about male narcissists, or, for all the viewers now, who do you think we've been talking about? Have you been thinking we've been talking about only males? Females are out there as well. They tend to be much more recognized because we're still horribly genderist, that we confuse strong, powerful women with, I would say, being narcissistic. They're not. Sometimes they're just nice, strong, powerful women who don't take BS. Hey, I'm swearing today. But a true blue female sociopath, watch out. She's much worse with the males because she has needed to be much more covert, versus males, I would say, are much more overt and have been systematically socially rewarded for their behavior, versus females are not overtly rewarded, so they become covert and more dangerous.
Man. Yeah, the males behave kind of like crows. They gather shiny objects, Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a real base level, instinct there.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about the workplace and just going on the corporate side. There's a difference between influence and authority. Authority only works when you're in the room. Influence stays in the room after you leave. So with a narcissist, because what you want to do is you want to have hopefully it's a positive influence on somebody, aspire for greatness. But if you're only aspiring because you're told to, that's authority. And once you leave the room, it doesn't exist anymore. We try to, hopefully we can influence people versus force them to do something. Does that come into play with a narcissist, or they don't care? It's still about this.
Well,
are you saying there are influencers online that are narcissistic?
That are podcast hosts?
No, I think a key thing here is what's the underlying emotion that people leave. Okay. Authority or influence, the key word here is respect versus fear. Okay. And a good narcissist or a good sociopath will groom. Okay. So that once they leave the room, you're left destabilized to a certain extent that they still have quote unquote influence over you. Authority, it's only when you see the stick, and the second the stick is gone. But I think two of the key manipulators are fear and insecurity. What if? And like the really, really good ones, I mean, they can be gazillions of miles away and they're still in your head. You're thinking about what would they think, or how, if I did this or if I did that. Right.
So of all the stuff that we talk about, now I'm kind of depressed. This seems like to be the only thing that we can't, quote unquote, fix. If you're a narcissist, you're just screwed. Is that true?
Well, again, I think it's fantastic that we're talking about this. And if people can start to recognize these personalities, and once they kind of feel the puppet strings becoming secure, run, just get out of that.
So we can't help the narcissist, but we can help the people that are around the narcissist. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, step one in any kind of a therapy is the person deciding that there's something that they want to have changed.
Yeah.
And if you're a narcissist and you think you're the archetypal best of everything, I mean, you're why would you step up for change? So again, you're not going to get them usually coming in for therapy because they don't feel they need therapy, period. And it's not just there's a lot of kind of subtle denial about anything being wrong that happens. You don't want to be the weak zebra in the herd because you're the prey at that point.
Yeah.
But that there's a little bit of a difference thinking you're the king of the jungle than just one of the zebras, And so you're not going to get them coming in for therapy, but you may get them intrigued with peak performance or performance optimizing. Making brains work better may end up helping them, but you've got to get them involved in wanting to have something changed. And again, it's probably not going to happen with them walking through the door of somebody with a shingle over top that says it's therapy.
But a parent comes in with their kid and says they're a narcissist, do something about it. What do you do?
Well, how old is the kid? Yeah.
You tell me. I don't know. Teenager.
Well,
you do family therapy, because if the parents bring in men saying they're a narcissist, what do you do? Believe them?
My mom's a gaslighter, so
So Judith Lubar, bless her heart. I mean, she's long since passed, but one of her major contributions to the field was to suggest if you've got a kid in therapy for ADD or depression or whatever it might be, you should probably look at the family as a piece of what needs to have therapy. There are families that will need to keep somebody as the sick person in the family, and they're going to re-entrain them back into being the ill person or something. You need to look at the family dynamics, and her call to consider family therapy as not just working with the kid, but considering family therapy, I think was really well founded. And again, she was one of the real staunch promoters of that as something you just had to do.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% behind that. I often say the most important tool or piece of equipment in my office, it's not any computer system or electrode. It's actually a couch, because I invite the family in frequently when working with the designated client and sticking those electrodes on. But looping back in terms of when you would see a narcissist and under what conditions would they come in to a therapy office, it's almost always the spouse being dragged in, or again the narcissists themselves coming in because you become a part of their scheme. So that's why I'm saying you can be weaponized against the partner or against the child. So you want to be really, really careful. Narcissists ain't for newbies. The other is in terms of, some of I think we're talking about a Bowen here, but enmeshment and differentiation. These are high within these families. And if you start doing, I'm going to air quote, good therapy, that narcissist and that sociopath is going to be very, very upset with you. And unfortunately, they also tend to be very intelligent people. So there's a running joke that every therapist is one personality disorder client away from losing their license. Same type of thing with these, these highly manipulative people. I think one of the key ones is if you're doing a couples therapy or marital therapy, and one of the individuals is a narcissist, I think it's really your job at that point is just to hold up mirrors and just help people to see the personalities and the behaviors and reach their own conclusions.
I was just thinking about that, Doc. It's, you go to couples therapy and, you're headed for divorce, and, somebody says you're a narcissist. That's it. That's over.
Yeah.
Game over. You can't, I want to say 100%, but I mean,
well, that's not my job to do, though. Again, one of it's kind of funny. Everybody, I'm quite sure, has heard this joke that, the only people I know who are divorced are the people who go to couples therapy. Well, I mean, my issue with couples therapy is people always come too late. Okay. There are these things that I call critical incidents, that big argument or that big event. And if that's 5 or 7 years ago, you've gone too long. I mean, that's just ingrained. But if people come in earlier, then there's so much you can do. But it really is a 50-50. And that's not the score of a successful versus unsuccessful therapist. It's about timing and whether a couple is right, and helping them to make that decision. So if you have a narcissist,
you mentioned holding up mirrors.
Yeah.
Steve Cassell does biofeedback and allows the people to see their partner's heart rate variability and electrodermal activity and temperature. And in looking at that, it adds objectivity to you can deny the fact that you had a response, but when your meters are going freaking crazy in the background, everybody can see you had a response. You can't, you can be stone-faced and deny it, but there's no reality to that. You can, holding up the mirror sometimes gets beyond the surface and gets quite a bit deeper.
I want to make a really bad joke here, which is if
you come to the right place.
No, a narcissist, non-narcissist couple, the narcissist is going to be making the other person do all the work. So that, no, but in terms of the bio work, a lot of us have been doing that for a while. It is so powerful, so powerful. But you have to have a pair that really wants change. You can't have a pairing where one person wants to be a victim, see how bad it is, see how emotional I get, or vice versa. And it's about the readiness of the couple, and what is the intent of the couple? When a couple comes in, do they just want to witness? Do they want, somebody outside of the couple to say, yeah, your husband is a piece of work, or do they actually want help in decision making and make effort to repair a couple?
Well, from the guy's point of view, the wife is looking for confirmation bias.
You guys are equally, if not more, guilty. Sorry.
Jay, you got a thought?
I've got too many exes to have a thought about this.
Everybody knows the history here, right?
Yeah. So, I have. I'm experienced in this area.
I like to go on record that everybody should have a first couple wives. Got to get it right.
Yeah. Well, but actually, I think this is a good topic, though, in terms of, how do you find a good partner, a suitable partner? People who are very, very, very driven in careers, if you have a partner that does not have their own passion or doesn't have grounding in something other than the relationship, that will fail. Or you have, I don't want to say a passive partner because that's an insult, but a traditional caretaker where the career is on a pedestal. I think there's a lot to learn in the modern world, knowing who you are, knowing what makes you tick, and a potential partner also knowing. It's not having those conversations or not recognizing the core of a potential partner before you make a commitment.
So all of my exes that are still alive are still friendly with me.
Okay. Good.
Not mine. Dr. Marie Swingle, Jay Gunkelman, since I'm the narcissist of the show, and the show is all about me, I'd like to thank you. As I think we have one more show coming up for the year. It'll be after Christmas. We can't say Christmas on the show, can't we? Holiday, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. Hopefully everybody isn't lonely, has somebody to talk to. If not, they can always email me and get.
Don't forget Festivus. The festival for the rest of us. So
airing of grievances.
Winter solstice. How's that? That we can't deny. That's universal.
A good Canada holiday. we hope everybody has a great time off, and we got one more show before the 2024. All right, guys, take care.
Take care. Thanks.
Bye, Renee.
NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.